Hey, what's up everyone? It's J-Rock, and today I have a super smelter tutorial for you. This is my own design, kind of a little bit more manual input, but this doesn't rely on having to have a complex redstone timer circuit, or you have to have at least a stack of items in there before it can get sent off. Uh, anyway, let's take a look at what this is. So this is a 16 by 2, so 2 rows of 16 of furnaces with auto droppers coming out the bottom for every four furnaces. So every fourth one, there's a dropper shooting straight down into a water stream being fed in by the three hoppers underneath the other three furnaces. And up top, we have our rail system, which is a whole lot more simpler than it looks. So everything over here is just running rails on top of the hoppers, making sure they're powered. And back here, this little bit of redstone with a detector rail on either side. Yeah, that's about as complex as we get in this, but it's still so useful. Okay, so maybe we do get a little bit more complex. This is just the auto dropper system, but I'll explain every bit of how it works so you understand it, and give you a block by block tutorial. So, speaking of block by block tutorials, let's get on with it. Okay, so inside here is everything we need. So 32 furnaces, 8 droppers, almost 2 stacks of hoppers, probably 2 stacks of building blocks. These can be anything. Powered rails, a few regular rails, only 2 detector rails. And I'll let you pause and take a look at everything else you need. You will actually need 2 minecart with chest, 2 buttons, and plenty of water for the water streams. And the soul sand and stained glass is just for a water elevator if that's how you decide to transport your items. So now that you've got all that gathered up, we can get started. So I'll go ahead and grab the furnaces, droppers, hoppers, and some of these. And we'll get started right here. I'm going to put these 2 apart. We'll go 2 deep and make this, each of these 16 blocks long. So I'm going to dig these out and be right back. Okay, once you've got that dug out, you want to come all the way to the back and count 3 in. So 1, 2, 3, and on the 4th one, place one of your building blocks. And we're going to put one of these 3 apart on each side, all the way down. And this is what's going to be part of our auto dropper system. So now that all those are in place, we can come in and place our droppers, and they need to face down into the water stream. And I just placed furnaces. Like I said, place droppers facing down. Once those are done, you want to add 3 hoppers going into them from each side, and you're going to do that on both sides, and they need to all be directed into one. So this dropper takes in those 3 hoppers, this one takes in those 3, this one is going to take in these 3, and the same thing on the other side. And on top of those, we need to put another set of hoppers that feeds into those. And this is what's going to pull the finished product out of our furnaces. So let me get all of these. Once you've got these, you can start placing your furnaces all on top. And you can do that on both sides. It does not matter which way they're pointed. They can be pointed that way, this way, the opposite way. I'm just going to point all of mine in just because. Now once those are built up, we're going to come around to the back and line the back with hoppers. And that's going to help us, that's going to let us input our fuel. If you run a hopper into the back of the furnace like we have now, that will populate the fuel slot. If you run it into the top, that'll populate the item to smelt. And that works for furnaces, smokers, and blast furnaces. So now we need to fill in, the item slot. So now we're going to come up top and fill that in. And once you've got all that filled in, we need to come back and put all this away and get our comparator, repeater, dust, and we're still going to be using some of the building blocks, and we're going to build up the auto dropper system. So a comparator can read a signal from something through a solid block. So if we place one there and place an item in there, we can see it picks up on that. And that is what we're using for this. So the signal from that is going to power this block, which is going to provide power to that redstone dust, and it's going to also power this block. And all that's going to be with the same signal. So if this only has a 1 signal strength, then we can do F3 and look at the right side and see the power level is 1. And if we came over here, place the redstone dust, we can still see that the power level is 1. So we're going to take that and put a repeater to bring that signal strength up all the way to 15. And we're going to put redstone just like that. What that'll do is cause the comparator to shut off because the input on the side will be greater than the actual input, and it'll disengage, and this redstone that comes on top of this block will power that block, which powers the dropper. Let's come down here and grab our building block. So no matter how many items you have, this will run because of the comparator logic from the signal it's reading from the back being less than the signal it's reading from the side. And so it just spits all 32 of those. And that's going to go down into our water stream. So let me build all of the rest of these up, and I'll be back in just a second. One quick note about your redstone. Ever since 1.16, they have introduced this new mechanic with it where you can right-click it and make it not power the blocks around it. So if you find that in the end you're not getting items, go around and check to make sure that all of yours are in that configuration where they have lines going out of them instead of the dot that's not connected to anything. Because that's not going to help convey that signal between that block over to that one, and nothing is going to end up powering that, and the dropper will just fill up constantly and hold all of your items. So once you have all of your auto dropper systems in place on both sides, we can come back and grab our rails. So I don't need any of that anymore. And we're going to still hold on to some of our building blocks. And we'll go ahead and grab our redstone torches. So off of whichever side, you can do this on the left or the right. I'm going to do it on the right. We want to come out 4 blocks, and then come out 7 blocks. 6, 7. And we're going to build up there and put a redstone torch underneath. And that will power these rails. Then we want to come over here and add this little configuration there. So you've got 5 powered rails, and right here, you're going to put a detector rail with regular rails leading out, and the rest of this all the way down can be powered rails. Once you get to the end, you need to bring it out. I'll go ahead and bring the top out also. And make sure you bring it out at least 2 away from the hoppers, so 1, 2. Otherwise, some of the hopper fillings can get a little bit weird, and some may end up with more items than they need to have. Once you have this in place, just keep filling it in with your powered rails all the way around, and then once we get to the end here, we're going to come out 2, build up a block, put a redstone torch. And while we're here, we'll go ahead and do the same thing on this side. Now we need to build up the rail line for the items. So this will supply the fuel line, and this one will supply the items. So build out until you're at least 4 past these. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to come out 7 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Build up and put a redstone torch just like before. This time, though, instead of doing the configuration like that, like we did over there, it needs to come out there, so you have 2 across and, or 2 deep and 3 wide. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And from here, starting just on this side of it, you can fill that in with powered rails. And then do regular rails, a detector rail, and the rest can be powered rails from here. Okay, and next what we want to do is wire up our detection system. Actually, before we do that, we need to put in our input line. So these can go anywhere you want. Bring them up to your super smelter room, so you don't have to see this all the time, or come up on scaffolding. These can really just go anywhere you want. So if you wanted to bring them over and snake them up like this and all meet up somewhere way over here, that's fine. You can absolutely do that, as long as there is a button on the end of it that you can power that powered rail with to send the minecart off. Now that those are in place, we'll come back and do the buttons and minecarts later. But now I need a comparator, basically all 3 of our redstone stuff, and we already have the torches and still need our building blocks here. So on this side, with just the 2, we need to put a comparator coming off of the detector rail, piece of redstone dust, and a repeater. So that is going to power and depower this rail, and this goes off of direction instead of whether it's depowered or powered. And what this is going to do is, and we'll see this in action later, but as a minecart with chest comes by here, if it has anything in it at all, that's going to give off a signal, which is going to cause this to flip and send it that way. And once that pulse is done, this brings it out far enough for it to switch back so that it can go back down and back through the furnaces. And we're going to wire up the same thing on this side, but because of the directionality, we actually need to invert it. So we're going to place a comparator there with a block and a redstone torch and a piece of dust. So now we can see that's switched, and that's got it going the right way. So whenever we press the button to send the minecart from here down, it needs to go this way first across the furnace array. On its way back, it'll get measured and decided whether it needs to reroute on the furnace array or return back to be filled up by you. Now that that's in place, we need to grab your redstone blocks, and you can go ahead and get your mine carts and buttons. So for your redstone blocks, just place one above every other auto dropper system and one at the end. And on those, otherwise since that's disconnected from the others with the corner rail, it's not going to get power from them. And mimic that on this side. And we also want to make sure to power these, so I'll go ahead and put one there and one there. You could also do that with redstone torches if you want, and these, if you don't have enough redstone, you can do that with a building block and a lever on it, and that'll do exactly the same thing. Now we can come over here and put our minecart with chest on there, and yes, I'm recording this around Christmas time, so these do look like lovely little packages. Now we can put our button there. We can put it on, any side of the block. It doesn't really matter as long as you have some way to temporarily power it. Or this doesn't need to be, permanent on or off. So that just the button there is fine. Any duration as long as it can send the minecart off. Now all of that for the rail system is completely done. All that's left is to work out our outputs. So I'm going to dump all this back off and grab our water bucket with some ice and signs. I'll go ahead and grab our chest and a couple more hoppers. So you can do anything you want with your output line. For me, I'm just going to bring it out here and put it down into the ground. But you can take, these finished items wherever you want. We can see some of these other designs that I've got where I bring them up into the sky. So this is, if you have this buried underground, obviously you'd route the fuel and the items up to where you are on that level. But this brings things over, brings them up, and puts them into a chest here. Oh, I had some extra stuff. Good. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to bring this down here. So I'm just going to come down here, and one below the water stream is where I'm going to put the chest. So right there, and 2 hoppers pointing into the very back of it. So right here, I'm just going to put a couple of water streams there. And I forgot to grab any glass. That's going to help out a lot here. I'll put some glass right there just to hold the water back. Okay. Now, anywhere that you want your water to not flow, like right there, we'll be getting water from that direction, and I want it to stop right there. You can put a sign or a fence gate, or trapdoor or slab. I'm going to be using signs on the side, and ice just helps it to move along to carry that momentum. So as you go through and put your water streams in, you want to count out at least 1, but I'm going to go 2 from the last dropper, because we don't want it to drop right on ice, then it's not really going to go anywhere. And we're going to do that all the way down, and we're going to skip every other one. So we skip that one, got to this one, 1, 2. Well, that'll work. And now we're already at the end. We can add our water. You see the sign will hold that back, but at the same time, that'll still let it slide on across. Okay, and we see that stops right there, and that's going to bring it here and flow it right into these hoppers. And we're just going to mimic the same thing on this other side. Alright, now that you have that in place, your 32 items super smelter is done. And we can start testing this out, and I can show you how this works in action. So let me grab some fuel and some things to cook, and I dropped it in the wrong spot. Let's dump off all of this other stuff. Okay, let's grab some dried kelp block and some kelp. So our fuel line, and obviously you'll want to label these with signs, but our fuel line is this one. It's 1 lower. So I'm going to fill this up with fuel, and we'll send this off. And actually, I'm going to take some of this out. This way we get to see the automatic return system in action. So we'll just put 2 stacks in there. Okay, so that's going to send it on, and put 1 in each furnace. And there's the second pass. We can see there's 1 in each until it passes through. And there, that automatic resend system just activated. And then we can see it on the return also. So we can see it didn't activate, so now it returns back to the starting point. So let me send off a couple more stacks and we can see that again. So off it goes. There should be, yeah, there should be 5, 6, there should be about 8 items this time, but we'll watch it, how this happens. So it'll get compared, switch the rail, it switches back, and off it goes back on the furnaces. And of course this setup will work exactly the same way. And we can go ahead and see that now. I'll go ahead and fill this all the way up with kelp and send it on. So now we can see those start activating, and shortly we'll hear the droppers start going, and we'll start receiving items. There we go. And since I've got 2 hoppers here, it can keep up with double hopper speed. So we can see items just start to flow in. And this will fill up fairly quickly. So see, just in the last couple of seconds, we already have a stack. Okay, and there is our items. Let's see how many's left. Not that. Okay, so we've still got quite a few left. But looks like our fuel has returned. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit. And after only about 5 minutes, this is what we've got already. And you can make this as long as you want, although I would caution against making it too long, as things get out of render distance, they'll get unloaded and some of the droppers won't activate until you walk down in that direction. There's a really long 64 by 64 that I put together over here that I was actually missing a couple of kelp, and the reason why is because I needed to walk a little bit further and load in that last set of droppers, and then those 2 got dispensed back to me. And you can double the length of this, and that would be just fine. So instead of 16 per row, so there's 2 rows of 16, you can have 2 rows of 64. And that's this one here. That's what that would look like. So instead of 4 auto dropper sections, you would have 8 on each side. And of course, the more furnaces you have going at the same time, the faster and more efficient it's going to be. And you can even, instead of going all the way down 2 rows of 64, you can just have 4 rows of 32, which is what I've got here. So it's this design, the 64 at a time, so 32 and 32. I just moved them over. So if you're going to do this, whenever you're digging out your water waste for your return items, you want to make sure there's at least 9 blocks worth of space in between. That leaves 1 block of space in between all of the auto droppers. That way none of the redstone signals get mixed and crossed over. Just like the others, take that water stream wherever you want, down to the ground, up in the sky, 3 chunks over, although I wouldn't advise it. Obviously with the mine carts, there is a little bit of a delay, but this particular one will still get you a little over 1,300 items smelted per hour. Obviously the rates are going to be a little bit lower the less furnaces you've got, but just in the time we've been talking, this is almost done. It's just got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stacks left, and as fast as it can go through a stack that we've seen, we can see the item chest is already returned back completely empty. You can see there's only about 10 items, 9 or 10 items per furnace left to go, and that's burning pretty quickly. Yeah, there. Since we've been talking, there's just already been a whole nother stack come through, and another one started on. So that's it. This is my super smelter design with a little bit more of a manual send-off mechanism with the minecart chests, but you know, instead of having to run off of a timer with complicated redstone circuits and delay signals, or run off of having to have a full stack or this many items before anything gets sent off, you have a little bit more control over it. So if you wanted to just send off 5 items to this, although this is a little bit overkill for just 5 items, but if you wanted to, you absolutely could send off just 5 items and be perfectly fine. So that's all I've got for you today. I hope you liked it. If you enjoyed this, make sure you leave a like. If you use this in your world, let me know down in the comments. And if you want to see more stuff like this, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much. See ya.